The house that didn't change the house hasn't changed much. Same street, same floor plan as the one next door. The people who bought both of them in 2005 made the same down payment, signed the same 30-year loan, and drove away with the same key on the same foam keychain. 21 years later, one of them owns their home free and clear. The other still owes $252,000 and won't be done paying until 2050. Nothing dramatic separated them. No lottery win, no inheritance, no disaster. Just one quiet decision made on an ordinary Tuesday that compounded in silence for 2 decades. One decision, 2 directions, 1 street. The nail in the wall. The nail is already in the wall when you move in. The previous owner left it there. A single finish nail, maybe 2 inches long, slightly off-center on the living room wall. You notice it the first morning, standing in the empty room with a cup of coffee, the moving boxes still stacked by the door. In one version of your life, you hang a family photo on that nail and move on. That afternoon you call your bank and set up an automatic transfer. $150 extra every month, straight to your mortgage principal. Not because someone told you to, not because you ran the numbers on a spreadsheet, just because it felt like the right thing to do with the small amount left over after the bills. You don't tell anyone. There's nothing to tell. It's a Tuesday. In the other version of your life, you stand in that same living room and feel something harder to name. Not dissatisfaction exactly, more like the gap between what the house is and what it should be. The linoleum in the kitchen catches the afternoon light in a way that bothers you. The layout is almost open concept, but not quite. This is your home now. It doesn't feel like it yet. By month 2, you've taken out a home equity line of credit for $24,000, and the kitchen is getting gutted. New floors, new cabinets, an island that opens the whole space up. You stand in the middle of the renovation, and it finally feels like yours. That feeling is real. It costs $24,000 plus interest, and it is real. Both of you are now living in the same house on the same street. Both are paying $1,139 a month on a 30-year mortgage at 5.9%. Both making around $46,000 a year. You're a project coordinator at a logistics company. Your neighbor is a physical therapist at a regional clinic. Neither of you is behind. Neither of you is ahead. The starting line is still perfectly even, except it isn't, because one of you just added $24,000 in debt to a house you've owned for 60 days, and one of you just quietly started pulling your payoff date forward, month by month, without a single person noticing or congratulating you for it. Why the first years matter most, that $150 a month is not a dramatic number. It won't make a difference this year. It barely makes a dent in the second year. But a 30-year mortgage at 5.9% is a machine that runs almost entirely on interest in the early years. In year 1, nearly $900 of your $1,139 monthly payment goes straight to the bank, not to the principal you actually own. The extra $150 changes that math slowly, then all at once. It shortens your loan. It reduces the balance on which interest compounds. It is doing something you won't be able to see clearly for another decade. The home equity line is also doing something you won't see clearly for a while. It adds a second monthly payment on top of the mortgage and turns equity back into debt, and it establishes a pattern. The house becomes a place where the distance between wanting something and borrowing for it is very short. You're not reckless. You made a kitchen look the way a kitchen should look, and you borrowed the money to do it, because that's what the equity was there for. That's a completely normal thing to do. Normal is not the same as free. The photo on the nail and the gutted kitchen are both just the beginning. What happens next? The promotion, the better school district 2 zip codes over. The phone call from a realtor who says the timing is right is where the first version of your life and the second one stop looking anything like each other. Because the real cost of this house was never going to be the mortgage. It was always going to be what you decided to do the first time someone told you it was time to move up. The friction tax nobody talks about the call comes in the spring of 2010. It's a realtor, someone your co-worker mentioned at a birthday party, someone who seems to know the neighborhood well and speaks in the confident shorthand of a person who does this every day. The market has been recovering. Your house has appreciated. You got a raise last year, the first real one since before the financial crisis, and your wife just found out she's pregnant with your second. The school district 2 zip codes over has better ratings. The houses there are bigger. And the realtor says, with the easy certainty of someone who has said this 1,000 times, that it's a good window. You think about the kitchen you renovated, the way it finally feels like home. And then you think about the new house, the extra bedroom, the yard with the oak tree out front. You think about your kids growing up there. You say yes. Here is what nobody tells you at the closing table. Every time you sell a home and buy another one, somewhere between 8 and 10% of your property's value simply disappears. Not into the new house, not into your equity. Gone. Agent commissions currently run around 5 to 6% of the sale price. Closing costs, title, insurance, transfer taxes, escrow fees and recording fees add another 2 to 3% on top of that. On a home worth around $210,000 in 2010, that friction tax lands somewhere between $16,800 and $21,000. That money is gone before you spend a single night in the new house. Think about what 5 years of mortgage payments have built. 5 years of $1,139 a month. 60 payments. Just over $68,000 sent to the bank. In the early years of a 30-year mortgage at 5.9%, the majority of each payment goes to interest rather than principal. So the equity you actually built in those 5 years is roughly $14,000 to $16,000. The transaction costs of moving just wiped out nearly everything you accumulated. You walked out of one house and into another and ended up financially almost exactly where you started. You didn't make a foolish decision. You made a normal one. That is precisely what makes it so expensive. In the other version of your life, nothing happened that spring. No call from a realtor, no closing table, no wire transfer to a title company. The nail is still in the wall. The $150 extra principal payment went out automatically, the way it has every month for 5 years. Nobody noticed. Nobody congratulated you. But here's what that Tuesday transfer quietly built. Your principal balance is lower than it should be for a loan this age. The interest portion of each payment has been shrinking slowly because the balance it's calculated on keeps shrinking. You are ahead of the amortization schedule in a way that doesn't show up anywhere visible. It lives in the math, compounding quietly in the background, without acknowledgement. 2 houses, same street, same starting point. One is 5 years into a reset. The other is 5 years deeper into something that's just beginning to build real momentum. And the version of you that moved is not done moving, because the same logic that made the first upgrade feel right is still there. It doesn't go away after one move. It gets easier to believe. The home equity line made borrowing feel manageable. The sale made equity feel liquid. The new house made progress feel like something you do by changing addresses, which is exactly the condition you're in when 2020 arrives. Rates fall to levels nobody has ever seen. And starting over one more time starts to sound less like a risk and more like the responsible thing to do. Lower rates, higher debt, the number everyone is talking about in the fall of 2020 is 2.9%. That's the going rate on a 30-year fixed mortgage, the lowest in recorded history. The Federal Reserve has been holding rates near zero since the pandemic hit in March, and the effect on the mortgage market has been extraordinary. Your phone keeps buzzing with headlines. Your brother-in-law refinanced in August and won't stop talking about it. Your financial advisor, a guy named Daniel, you've been meaning to call back for 3 months, leaves a voicemail saying, "This window won't stay open forever." You've been in the second house for 10 years now. The kids are in middle school. The neighborhood is fine, better than fine, but the house feels smaller than it did when you bought it. And you've been watching a development go up 12 minutes away. Bigger lots, newer construction, the open floor plan you've wanted since you gutted the kitchen back in 2007. At 2.9%, the payment on a house that costs $340,000 is actually lower than what you're paying now. You do the math on a mortgage calculator. At 11 at night on a Wednesday, it works. It more than works. You could pull cash out of your equity, pay off the home equity line, cover the down payment on the new place, and still come out with a lower monthly payment than you have today. You call Daniel back the next morning. Here is what the calculator didn't show you. Every 30-year mortgage front loads the interest. In the first year of any new loan, roughly 75 to 80% of each monthly payment goes to interest, not principal. You felt it in the first house, watching the balance barely move in those early years. But 10 years into your second mortgage, that ratio had finally started shifting. You were paying more principal than interest for the first time. The loan was genuinely shrinking. The new mortgage resets that ratio back to year 1. You are 44 years old. You have just taken out a 30-year mortgage. If you make every payment on schedule and never move again, this loan will be paid off in 2050. You will be 74 years old. The rate went down. The debt went up. The thing that felt like financial optimization, pulling equity, lowering your payment, locking in a historic rate, was actually the banking system doing what it does best. It made starting over look like a genius move. This is what the industry calls leveraging your equity. What it actually is a very efficient way to stay in debt for the rest of your working life. In the other version, the fall of 2020 is quiet. The headlines come through just the same, but the version of you that stayed in the first house runs a different calculation. Your remaining balance is now under $35,000. The extra $150 has done what compound math does when you leave it alone long enough. It has pulled your payoff date forward by years. You are not refinancing. You are watching the number get smaller and doing nothing else. Nothing else is the whole point. Because while the other version of you is celebrating a lower monthly payment, you are 6 or 7 years away from having no payment at all. And what happens when a mortgage disappears is the part of this story that most people never get to. That part is coming. But first, you need to see what both versions of this life look like right now, 21 years after that Tuesday. Because the number you're about to see is the one that changes how you think about every house you will ever live in. The number you can't unsee it is 2026. 21 years from that Tuesday. You are 50 years old. Both versions of you woke up this morning, made coffee and went to work. From the outside, the two lives look roughly similar, same age, same city. But the financial distance between them is the kind of number that doesn't feel real until you write it down. So write it down. In one version of your life, your remaining mortgage balance is approximately $18,000. That is what 21 years of $1,139 a month, plus $150 extra every month without missing one, has reduced a $190,000 loan to. You could write that check from savings this afternoon and own your home outright before dinner. Either way, the mortgage is gone within 14 months. You are standing at the edge of something most Americans never reach. A paid-off house before retirement. When that last payment clears, your monthly housing cost drops to property taxes and insurance. In this market, that runs around $300 a month. The $1,139 that has been leaving your account every month for over 2 decades doesn't disappear. It redirects. You set up an automatic transfer, the same way you set up the $150 extra payment back in 2005. Now, $1,139 goes into a low-cost index fund every month. No drama, no announcement, just a number moving from one place to another on a Tuesday. In the other version of your life, you are carrying approximately $252,000 still owed on the house you bought in 2020. The refinance that felt like a smart move in the fall of that year locked you into a 30-year mortgage that doesn't resolve until 2050. You are 50 years old. Your mortgage will outlive your career. The house is beautiful. The neighborhood is everything you wanted, and you will be making payments on it until you are 74. Now look at what the moves actually cost. 2 transaction events. The 2010 sale and the 2020 upgrade consumed somewhere between $34,000 and $45,000 in direct fees, agent commissions, closing costs, title insurance, transfer taxes, and escrow fees. Not $1 of that went toward a house you still own. It passed through your hands on the way to a title company, a brokerage, a county recorder's office. You paid it because everyone pays it. It is normal. It is also permanent. If that $34,000 to $45,000 had gone into an S&P 500 index fund starting in 2005 and stayed there, it would be worth somewhere between $300,000 and $400,000 today. That is not a projection. The S&P 500 delivered an average annual return of 11% over the 20 years between 2006 and 2025, a stretch that includes the 2008 crisis, the 2020 crash, and the 2022 bear market. 11% is the number you get when you stay in through all of it. The version of you that stayed didn't earn that money. They simply didn't lose the seed that would have grown into it. That is the invisible number. Not the square footage, not the school district, not the open floor plan. The number that actually defined the difference between these two lives never appeared on any listing sheet. The compounding cost of the decision to leave. Both versions of you made payments every month for 21 years. One of you is almost done. The other has 24 years left. And the only thing that explains the gap is not income, not timing. It is a single repeated decision, made at moments that each felt completely reasonable. To keep moving, and the quiet, unglamorous alternative of staying put and letting the math do what math does when you leave it alone. The tree you didn't plant, what that actually looks like in a life. Not a spreadsheet, but a life. Because there is a tree in the front yard of that first house that has been growing since the day you left it, and someone else is sitting under it now. You drive past the first house on a Tuesday afternoon in late October. You weren't planning to. Traffic on the main road backed up from a fender bender 2 intersections ahead, and your navigation rerouted you through the old neighborhood without asking. You haven't been down this street in years, maybe longer than that. You slow down without deciding to. The house looks smaller than you remember. The beige paint is gone, replaced by dark green with white trim. The driveway has been repaved. There's a basketball hoop at the end of it, tilted slightly to one side. Someone's kids play in this driveway now. Someone else's mornings start in that kitchen you renovated in 2007. And then you see the tree. It's in the front left corner of the yard, the same place you planted it the week you moved in. You bought it for $14, a thin stick in a black plastic pot, the kind that looks like it might not survive the first winter. You forgot about it almost immediately, busy with the renovation, the new job, the ordinary momentum of a life just getting started. The tree is taller than the roofline now. It went from a $14 stick to something that shades half the yard, entirely without your involvement. You left. It stayed. The roots went down while you were somewhere else, buying and selling and resetting and upgrading, and now it belongs to whoever lives there, which is not you. You sit in the car a moment longer than you mean to. The financial version of that tree is not complicated. It is the $150 a month you didn't set aside. It is the $34,000 to $45,000 in fees that left your life on the way to someone else's closing test, and never compounded into anything because it never got the chance. It is the amortization clock you reset twice back to year one because the rate was good, because the neighborhood was better, because you needed the space. It made sense at the time. All of it was true. None of it was free. What nobody tells you when you're standing at the closing table is that every house you buy is a tree you're planting. The value isn't in the transaction. It isn't in the upgrade. It isn't in the equity you pull out, or the rate you lock in, or the kitchen that finally feels like yours. The value is in the years, the uninterrupted, unspectacular, completely unremarkable years of staying in one place and letting the math run without interference. The version of you that stayed in the first house is 50 years old this year and weeks away from making the last payment on a mortgage. Not refinanced, not reset. That person is not wealthy in any visible sense. They drive a reasonable car. They take one vacation a year. But they are about to redirect over $1,100 a month for the rest of their working life into an index fund, quietly, on a Tuesday, the same way they've done everything else. That is what staying actually looks like. Not a story you tell at dinner. Not a number that shows up anywhere people can see it. Just a tree that got big while you were paying attention to other things. You put the car in drive and pull away from the curb. The tree stays. The question that belongs to you now, you already know which version of this story you're in. Not because you've made bad decisions. Because you've made normal ones. The upgrade that made sense. The rate that was too good to ignore. The house that finally felt like yours. Every one of those moments was reasonable. Every one of them had a cost that didn't show up until years later, in a number nobody warned you about. Here is what is true right now, today. The next move you make, whether that's staying or going, will compound for longer than feels real in the moment you make it. There is a house you're living in right now. There is something specific about it that no larger square footage will ever replace. A window, a floorboard, the way the light comes in on a Saturday morning. That detail is not nothing.